This is Decorian Moore. This kid is a 5-star recruit, and along with being the 5th-ranked player in the country, he is also the #1 ranked wide receiver in the class of 2025. A lot of people seem to think that he has the ability
Let's
to
watch
one day
some
become
football
a Hall of
highlights
Fame
right quick.
level
Let me know what
receiver.
y'all think.
Luckily,
Alright?
he's still able
I'll
to
be
play
right
after
down
that
in a minute.
crazy fall he had while celebrating with Travis Hunter.
He needs some milk.
So today, I am putting Decorian Moore into College Football 25. Let's see how his career could turn out in college as we'll follow him on his road to glory. Now, coming out of high school, like I said, Decorian Moore is a 5-star recruit, so it was no surprise that he was going to have quite a few options to choose from as far as where to go to college. But leading up to his decision, it started with a verbal commit to LSU. But then he went on a visit to the campus in March of 2024, followed by him decommitting from LSU in May. But around that same time, he went on an official visit to Oregon. And it wasn't too long after that where Decorian Moore decided to sign with the Ducks. Now, when Decorian got to campus, they found out that they did not have his #1. So he decided to go at #0 because he already had a couple of them in his name already, so, I guess it made sense. But technically, since this roster is for the 2024 season, Decorian Moore is not supposed to be here. So instead of watching all these games and waiting to get playing time, we can just skip through the entire season all the way to their loss to Ohio State in the playoffs, and Will Howard dropped 3 touchdowns on them, but now we are in Decorian Moore's freshman season, and we can just kind of pretend that sophomore says freshman instead. But now that Decorian is ready to start his freshman season, turns out that he's going to have to battle hard for some playing time, because there are some juniors and even a senior who decided to come back to college. So in Oregon's first matchup against Oklahoma, Decorian was not seeing the field at all. And in a game where Oregon barely squeaked out the W, Decorian feels like he could be doing more to help his team. Unfortunately though, it wouldn't be until week 4 where Decorian would finally earn his opportunity to move up in the depth chart. And there was absolutely no way that he wasn't going to take advantage of this after sitting on the bench the past few weeks. So by the end of the practice, he was able to move up to the #3 wide receiver, but now going into back-to-back bye weeks, this gives the coaches plenty of time to think about giving Decorian another opportunity before their next game. And after seeing how much of a leader he was becoming in the locker room, they figured why not. So going into the week of Oregon's next matchup, Decorian had to ball out of practice once again in order to prove to the coaches that he deserved to finally earn a spot on the field. He is now officially the #2 wide receiver for the Oregon Ducks. And now he gets to head into his first matchup of the season with Oregon still undefeated against the Iowa Hawkeyes. We start this playoff on 3rd and 7 because Decorian Moore is coming up with his first catch of his college football career. It seems like he wants to make his impact felt early because even with getting hit off the line, he is finding himself wide open and is able to get himself across the goal line for his first career touchdown just a few plays later. Hopefully there's going to be many more throughout his career to come, but I'll tell you guys what, Iowa gave Oregon great field position on their next drive, and Decorian went out there running a dig route over the middle, and he ended up getting smacked across the goal line for a touchdown. And I don't know what's crazier, the tomfoolery going on in the background, or the fact that Decorian is already doing a Heisman pose on his 3rd career reception. I definitely respect the belief he has in himself, but I bet he didn't believe his team would give up a safety in this game. Now, luckily that did not affect him too much, but sadly, it looks like this interception was about to. And with Iowa finally capitalizing on offense, things would start looking bad for Oregon when Iowa was capitalizing on defense too, coming up with their second interception that luckily led to no points. But it did lead to this play on 2nd and 4 where Decorian was able to break off his route and find himself getting in the end zone for his 3rd touchdown of the game. This is the kind of debut you want to see from the #1 wide receiver in the class. And it's because of him that Oregon would go on to win another game on their season, closing this one out 21-16, and Decorian Moore would go on to win Player of the Game. 169 yards and 3 touchdowns is miraculous for your first game. Shit, he played so good that the coaches started to trust him a little bit more, and he felt great about going into the following week and winning not only his first Big Ten Player of the Week, but his first National Offensive Player of the Week of his career for his first game of his career. And when the coaches realized that Decorian Moore in one game had already damn near surpassed the production of every single skill player on this offense, even the running back who was averaging 3.7 yards per carry. They told Decorian that he'll start to be the focal point of the offense, and he was real focused on trying to prepare for that going forward. The coaches even let him choose the team uniform going into his first ever game at home, as Oregon was set to face off against Wisconsin. To start his second career game at Oregon, Decorian was making his contributions little by little throughout the first quarter. Up until this play on 2nd and 10, where Decorian was able to create separation from his defender, break off at the top of the route and say, "Wang!" Coming up with his 4th touchdown catch in just 2 games, tying it up at 7, but Wisconsin would go down and get another score. In a game, though, where Decorian Moore was trying to make his impact felt heavily, you can only imagine how this game was about to turn out. For now, though, it wasn't turning out too well, with the quarterback throwing another pick well into enemy territory, not only giving up points for themselves, but allowing Wisconsin to take a 2-possession lead. Before half, though, the quarterback was luckily able to find a receiver up the seam, who had pretty much no one around him on his way towards the end zone for the score to make it a 1-possession game. But now in the second half, still down by 2 possessions, Decorian knows that he has to make a play, and he does right here. Coming up with the catch before making his way down the sideline and eventually diving across the goal line for the score, picking up a touchdown for his team and hopefully enabling a little bit of a comeback. Because by the time the 4th quarter hits, they are still down by 10, but Decorian is out there having the game of his life. They were doing all kinds of stuff to try to get him open, and on this first down and 10, they ran him out to the flat, and there was nobody around him. He was able to pretty easily get across the goal line for another score, bringing his team back within 1 possession once again. And now with under 3 minutes left in the game, Decorian has proven that he can just do it all. Going up there and snagging this shit off that little boy's head, thank you. But he's still going to help his team win this game, so he's working from the slot and catches the ball in the middle of the field for some big-time yardage to get him in field goal range. And after they failed to pick up this 3rd down conversion, this game would eventually be sent into overtime, where after somehow luckily making this catch, Decorian Moore brings his team all the way down to the 1-yard line, setting his team up with the score that ultimately led to a chance for them to win the game later. And after the 2nd down and 10 where Decorian ran a drag, this ball bounced off his head and he still caught the ball anyway. Oh yeah, you better believe that Oregon was about to close this game out and win it 41-38. And it was largely due to the spectacular performance by Decorian Moore. Over 200 yards receiving in his 2nd game and back-to-back games with 3 touchdowns. People around the country saw that this kid had potential to be something special, and that became apparent when he won back-to-back National Players of the Week. Now, he wasn't getting any recognition for the Heisman or anything, but that was all good, man. He was just a freshman. The important thing is that Oregon was the #1 team in the country, and they were undefeated, and they had an opportunity to continue that winning streak in their next game against an unranked Northwestern. We start this game off on 3rd down, where an upperclassman receiver is making a big play to move the sticks. They would eventually get down to the goal line and design a play for Decorian in the flat, where he got across the goal line for the first points of the game for Oregon. A score that would tie this game up at 7, but unfortunately it would seem like it would be far and few between. Because with the 2nd quarter now dwindling down under 2 minutes, Oregon hadn't even been able to get past midfield again up until this play. And it wouldn't be until 1 minute left where Decorian would take advantage of the movement from that backside cornerback and find himself in the front corner of the end zone for a touchdown, coming up with a score that would take the lead for Oregon and seemingly already put the game away, with Oregon going on to win in a low-scoring game 17-7. And Decorian Moore went on to win another player of the game with his 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not nearly as good as his previous 2 games, but still good enough to earn a chance to become the #1 wide receiver. The coaches realized that this kid might be a lot better than they thought he could be. And although they did have some upperclassmen in the wide receiver room, there was no more debate that Decorian Moore deserved to be the #1 guy. So at this point, Oregon is #1 over Alabama, Clemson, and Texas, who probably has Archie Manning, or a 99 overall Quinn Ewers. That works too. But with Decorian not even being close to the top of the leaderboard for the wide receiver rankings, he knows that he has a long season ahead of him to make up for it. And he's really hoping that just like Jeremiah Smith did the previous season at Ohio State, he can also establish himself as a freshman phenom throughout the country. We start this game off with a Dante Moore to Decorian Moore connection getting sparked early. And halfway through the first, Decorian is getting his way across the goal line for another touchdown on his season. But at this point, it feels like he's really just getting started. Because in the 2nd quarter, he comes out, swipes his DB hand away, runs up a little bit, then breaks to the outside, getting in for his 2nd touchdown of the day, and already doing enough to put this one away, as Oregon takes care of business 31-7, 2 touchdowns to go with it. And at this point, the whole country is starting to get scared because they notice he's getting better with every week. In a game against unranked Indiana, this Oregon quarterback was throwing picks all throughout the first half, leading to a 23-7 deficit by late in the 4th quarter. And Decorian Moore was the guy to help lead his team downfield and get them in position for the comeback. The running back was able to get in the end zone for a score to make it a little bit closer, and after the defense did their job giving Oregon great field position, Decorian was able to secure this catch and bring the score down to a 2-point game after they missed the 2-point conversion. But with less than 40 seconds left, Dekorian is once again coming up with the play to get his team in field goal range, putting them in position to finally complete this comeback. And the whole country just watched this true freshman lead them the entire way. Even in big games where his coaches were challenging him to come up with big plays, he would come out to play against the 4th-ranked team in the country. And all throughout this game, Dekorian Moore is still balling. He caught the ball in its drag route across the middle and started making his way past midfield down to the 43-yard line on a 47-yard gain. He ended up completing this drive with a little zig route at the top, where he caught it for a touchdown to tie this game up at 7. He continued his dominance into the second half, where he went up and caught a touchdown in traffic to give his team the now 2-possession lead and do enough to already put an end to this game, with Oregon going on to win this game 21-14, in another one where Dekorian went for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And at this point, everything was going well for him. His coaches were trusting him more. He even signed one of his first NIL deals where the company would be putting billboards of him all up around the city of Eugene. I mean, look at that right there. Do more? Hey, I ain't gonna lie. Hey, that sound cool. They even got one that says Dekorian, and this one sounds a little bit crazy, but I kind of like it. Because by the end of the season, a lot of people around the country started calling the Oregon Ducks the Dekorian Ducks. And you can see why after he became the first freshman in Oregon's history to go for 1,000 yards receiving. And in this game against Rutgers, there were a lot of great things going on for Dekorian. They were finding new ways to get him the ball, and he was capitalizing on it with a touchdown early. But he was also proving that along with being a great pass catcher, he could be an excellent downfield blocker as he springs his running back loose for another touchdown on his season and gives Oregon the 14-point lead. And there was also another play in the second quarter where Dekorian showed his elite awareness. Because after the running back fumbles this ball and the lineman picks it up, he goes up and blocks this guy out the way so the lineman could run down the field towards the end zone for a score. An absolute incredible play all around that I'm sure his lineman is thankful for. But even after all that, he still reminded people that he can go downfield and say, "Wang," snag that shit off a little boy's head, and send his team on their way to another victory. As Oregon goes on to punish Rutgers 52-10. And even though Dekorian was going crazy as usual, senior receiver Evan Stewart started to join in on the party as well, going for over 100 yards and a touchdown himself. And it was nice to see that a lot of these other weapons were rising up and playing to the level necessary that they need in order to dominate. And unfortunately, unranked Washington looked like they were in line to be their next victim. And this turned out to be a game where a lot of the other players were doing the work. The running back got across the goal line early to take the 7-3 lead. And once again, it's actually a game where Evan Stewart is coming up with a big play downfield and getting himself across the goal line for his own score, giving Oregon the 2-possession lead in the process. And in the second half on third down, even with Dekorian playing it slow off the line, they still found a way to get in the end zone for another touchdown and close out another game for Oregon, as they go on to win this one 31-20. And this time it's actually the senior Evan Stewart who comes up with player of the game. Over 150 yards and 2 touchdowns will definitely do that for you. But Dekorian still did his thing with 14 receptions and over 100 yards. But now heading into the last game of the regular season, Dekorian seems more focused than ever. And he kind of has to be, considering that this might be the biggest matchup of his season so far, as Oregon is heading on the road to face off against the Big Ten opponent, Penn State. Now, this game started off a little bit differently than others, with them not being able to get anything going throughout the first. It wouldn't be till the second quarter, down by 14, where Dekorian would take advantage of this cover 2 and bring his team all the way down to the 2-yard line. And just a couple plays later, he was able to run this slant and get across the goal line for a score, bringing his team back within 1 possession. But going forward, it wouldn't be much easier, because in the third quarter, I guess Dekorian and his quarterback had some miscommunication, and it resulted in a pick, luckily only leading to 3 points for Penn State. But now Oregon was down by 20. And thankfully, Evan Stewart was coming up huge once again, making a play in the biggest game of the year so far to help reduce this deficit to 2 possessions. By the fourth quarter, the Oregon running back was able to leap over the goal line for another touchdown to make it a 1-possession game, leading to a scenario where Oregon, with 1 minute left, had a chance to go down the field, score a touchdown, and win this game, as Evan Stewart is coming up with another catch and streaking his way downfield for another touchdown to hopefully put this game away, as long as the defense can hold up and not allow any more points, which they don't. And Oregon would go on to lose this game 30-28. In another game where Evan and Dekorian definitely did their part, going for 100 yards receiving and at least 1 touchdown apiece. But despite the loss, Oregon would make their way into the Big Ten championship. And if they win, they would have already secured their spot in the Rose Bowl for the college football playoffs. So Dekorian knew that since it was now the biggest time of the season, he had to be better than he ever was. And if he wanted to secure his team's spot in the playoffs, he would have to keep dominating in his next game against Illinois. And to start this game off, it definitely felt like he was dominating, He ran a little zig route to the outside before going upfield and shattering this kid's ankle, absolutely frying his shit all the way inside the 10-yard line, where a couple plays later the tight end got in the end zone to put the first points on the board. Later on in the first quarter, though, I do not know what coverage Illinois is running, but it definitely ain't the right one, because Decorian Moore is able to snag this ball in the end zone for a touchdown, making this a now 14-0 lead to close out the first. And after getting the ball back in the second quarter, Decorian had no problem running routes all over the field and helped lead his team back in scoring position. On third down and goal, he ran a fade route to the back pylon and came up with another catch that would give Oregon the now 3-possession lead before heading into halftime. And after halftime, it was definitely not looking better when all these other weapons looking to score as well. And after this wide receiver gets in the end zone for his own touchdown, that would be enough to put this Big Ten championship away, as Oregon goes on to win 42-14. And in his freshman season, Decorian Moore is already a Big Ten champion. Shout out to Dante Moore with the excellent performance throughout this game, and this entire receiving room definitely deserves their props as well. But now that it's the end of the year, there's some awards to be given out. And apparently the defensive coordinator wins Coordinator of the Year. And Gunnar Stockton out of Georgia goes on to win the Heisman Trophy this year. And Decorian hadn't really been focused on it all season, but it turned out that he did win Best Receiver Award. And this is after being on the bench for the entirety of the first 3 games. Now Decorian went on to win a couple of other awards, but when he saw how many players on his defense were in line to win something, he had no choice to be thankful that he likely had one of the best defenses in the country. And as far as the season stats, at this point, Decorian already had over 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns. But the most important thing is that Oregon has now clinched a spot in the college football playoffs. And their first matchup will be against the top 10 ranked team in the country, as they were set to face off against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Oregon finally got the ball in this game late in the first quarter, and the quarterback was looking to take a shot deep downfield, but the pass didn't even get downfield because it got picked off. And now Oregon was going into the second quarter having barely had the ball, down by 7 with only 2 minutes left. Luckily though, Decorian Moore was able to split the 2 defenders playing deep, and he was streaking his way upfield past the 10-yard line and into the end zone for a touchdown to tie this game up at 7. And it didn't stop there, because even with multiple defenders in his area, he was still able to get over the top, and once again he had nobody by him as he was making his way across the goal line for another score, giving Oregon now the lead in this game with less than 10 seconds left in the half. After halftime though, the tides would continue to turn, as this quarterback not only picks this ball off, but of course he takes it all the way back for a touchdown, taking the lead for Alabama. But Oregon would drive right back downfield and allow the running back to cross over the goal line for a touchdown, taking the lead right back in the process. But now later in the fourth quarter, with Oregon still having the lead, all they need was a first down to put this game away, but Decorian was looking for more, as he takes this jet pass to the outside, and he is now streaking down the sideline and dove into the end zone for another touchdown to not only extend their lead, but send the Oregon Ducks to the next round, as Oregon goes on to close this one out 35-23. And in the biggest game of his season so far, Decorian quite literally had his biggest game, going for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. An absolute monstrous performance by the freshman, who of course went on to win National Offensive Player of the Week for the playoffs. But now going into the following week, it looks like Oregon is about to play against the 12th seed. And in Decorian's mind, there's absolutely no way that he's about to lose to no damn Tulane. So he got extra prepared, as he was set to lock in with his team and potentially get their way past this round to the national championship. Now to start this game off, this Oregon Ducks offense wanted to establish dominance early. So they sent Decorian Moore out for a fade ball where he ran all the way to the back of the end zone and said, "Wang," coming up with a touchdown on the first play of the opening drive to get things going for Oregon. But yeah, it would not stop there, because the Ducks would continue to keep taking shots downfield throughout this game. And in the third quarter, another one landed in the hands of Decorian Moore to give his team the 2-possession lead. And with Oregon already showing their dominance, by the fourth quarter came around, it would only become more clear after Evan Stewart gets in for a score, extending the Duck lead even further and officially doing enough to send them to the championship game, as Oregon goes on to close this one out 28-20. And with the help of Decorian Moore's 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, he had helped Oregon get back to the national championship for the first time since 2014. And he wasn't too surprised to see that he's about to face off against the Georgia Bulldogs. He went to go check out their roster, and it turns out that they definitely got some players. Apart from the fact that they have a Heisman winning quarterback now, this roster is definitely going to be tough to beat. But he was just going to have to find a way in the national championship, as Oregon was set to face off against Georgia. Now this game definitely started off well for Oregon. They were not only able to make their way downfield, but across the goal line for a touchdown to take their early 7-0 lead. But then after getting the ball back on the next drive, the quarterback ends up getting sacked in the end zone for a safety, giving Georgia a chance to go down and take the lead, which they do. And even with Oregon driving downfield, their quarterback throws another pick on his season, and this one is returned all the way back the other way as Georgia is now taking the 2-possession lead. But as soon as the second quarter starts, DeCorian is looking to change that. So he gets himself open over the top, and he's making his way towards the end zone for another touchdown for Oregon, now making it a 1-possession game. And just like that, there have been 5 scores in this game already, and 4 of them have been due to the Oregon offense. But before the first half could end, the Oregon quarterback was back to throwing another interception, leading Georgia to now take a 3-possession lead. But DeCorian was not going out like that. In this third quarter, he was coming up with multiple catches that got his team downfield. This one brought his team across the goal line for a touchdown, hopefully giving his team some life, but Georgia continues to score. So straight up, man, DeCorian knows he got to be better. He speeds past his defender right here, and he is making his way across the goal line once again for another score. At this point, he's just really hoping that his defense can hold up, but they're not holding up. DeCorian is going out there doing everything he possibly can. He even goes downfield and snags this ball off another little boy's head to set his team up with great scoring position. But after the quarterback goes out there and throws another pick, that, ladies and gentlemen, would be enough to effectively put an end to this game, with Oregon going on to lose in the national championship. For the 3rd time in their history, they are just 1 win away and are unable to get it done. And despite the loss, DeCorian still won player of the game for his outstanding performance. But when he looked back at the tape and saw how one of these interceptions happened, yeah, rightfully so, he was pissed. He was like, look at this, what is that? What is that? Like, bro, how does this happen? How does that happen? Listen, I think there were a lot of factors that contributed to this Oregon loss, but number 18 needs his ass beat once he gets to the locker room. I'm so serious. Including the playoff stats, DeCorian Moore pretty much exploded for one of the best seasons in college football history, going for over 2,400 yards and 29 touchdowns. And it's no surprise that DeCorian and Dante Moore both hold a bunch of records throughout the Oregon record book. They had an incredible season, but unfortunately it just didn't end the way they wanted it to. But now that we're at the end of the season, DeCorian has to think about whether or not he wants to stay with Oregon or hit the transfer portal. He would definitely have plenty of options if he did, but he also wants to be part of the reason that Oregon wins their first ever championship. Which brings us to today, where DeCorian has decided to stay with Oregon for his sophomore season, because despite the fact that he has tons of offers from some of the best teams in the country, he truly believes that he can make history with Oregon. And on top of that, this year they are going to let him switch to number 1. So now DeCorian is ecstatic about getting into his sophomore season and potentially getting Oregon back to the national championship. But first, it all starts with game number 1, as Oregon is set to face off against Boise State. Now, it didn't take long for Oregon to face a complete bust in coverage, and just like that, DeCorian was moving his way towards the end zone for his first touchdown of the season on his first catch of the season. Now, that right there is definitely the way you want to get things started, but unfortunately, it did not stay that way. Because after Boise State picks off Oregon on their next drive, this Oregon offense would continue to struggle throughout the second quarter. Dante Moore, who was still the quarterback, even went on to throw another interception while targeting DeCorian. So now after halftime, things were not looking good with Oregon down by 2 possessions. But they started to get things back going by targeting a receiver on the opposite side and bring it back to a 1-score game. But by the end of this game, with less than 3 minutes left, even with DeCorian coming up with another catch that resulted in a touchdown, giving Oregon some life for a potential comeback. Sadly, things did not turn out that way, as Oregon would go on to lose their first game of the season, 31-25. And DeCorian had a great game with 5 receptions, 163 yards, and 2 touchdowns, but obviously this is not the way he wanted to start his sophomore season. The good news is that the coaches decided to put him back to wide receiver 1, and DeCorian was not messing around this year, man. He was going to try to do everything he could to get his team back to the Natty. So after winning probably his final position battle of his career, he had time to think about how bad that loss to Georgia hurt him. But Oregon cannot keep taking losses like this, or else they won't even have a chance to be in that position. So DeCorian in this offense has to make sure that they lock in going on the road in their second game against Ohio State. And DeCorian seems pretty locked in early on. He's able to get right past the defender on this play and make a catch on the outside, and easily burn past the safety on his way towards
I've always been a Dolphin
touchdown,
fan.
not even a couple minutes into this game. And on the road and even with the crowd, this Oregon offense seems to be clicking. Because after DeCorian
They go crazy for being a Dolphin, but
another catch, except this time he's streaking up the middle of the field, going in for his second touchdown of the game in the first quarter. At the start of the second quarter, he ran and dove towards the end zone for what could have been his 3rd touchdown of the game. But unfortunately, Oregon would actually get stopped on the goal line on that drive. The good news is that Oregon was getting the ball right back with great field position, and now DeCorian was able to come up with his 3rd touchdown catch of the day, giving Oregon a 24-0 lead over Ohio State, and already doing enough to put this game away, as Oregon goes on to win 27-14 in a game where DeCorian went for over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. An excellent performance that earns him Offensive Player of the Week. But DeCorian does not like the fact that Oregon is ranked 11th. He's trying to help get his team a bye week in the first round of the playoffs. But the only way to do that is to continue winning, which means that now they have to take down an in-state rival as they are set to face off against Oregon State. To start this game, this Oregon offense was not doing so hot. They were taking multiple shots at DeCorian Moore, but none of them were really hitting. It wouldn't be until around 20 seconds left remaining in the first quarter where DeCorian would just glide past his cornerback and find his way open for a touchdown. Absolutely nobody over the top as he crosses over the goal line for a score to tie it up at 7. Throughout the first half, though, even with DeCorian making tons of plays over the middle to get his team in great position, a lot of their drives would end up stalling out because of bad passes and/or sacks. Luckily, not pushing them too far out of field goal range so that they have the 10-7 lead after half. But DeCorian was continuing to be the guy to make those plays over the middle and move the chains for Oregon. And before the end of the third quarter, Oregon would finally get back in the end zone and start gaining some momentum throughout the rest of the game. Because by the end of the game, it would come down to this 3rd and 15, where DeCorian would run this crosser over the middle and not only pick up the first down, but as he moves the sticks, he helps pick up another victory for Oregon. As they go on to close this game out 23-14, with DeCorian winning another player of the game with almost 150 yards and 1 touchdown. And with the level of stardom that DeCorian has reached, it was no surprise that he was getting NIL deals all the time now. He signed his first one of the season, but there was definitely more to come. On top of that, he was still working hard to reach newer heights as a player and unlock levels that have never been seen before. But he knew all that work was going to continue to transfer to the field, especially with Oregon set to face off against one of their biggest rivals, Washington.
At the end of the day, man, football is a wonderful
We start this
sport.
game off with Oregon taking a shot deep to DeCorian, and he says, "Muay," snagging this ball right off the defensive back's head. And this turned out to be a play that
Gotta be safe.
DeCorian over 3,000 yards on his career. Absolutely outstanding for only being in your second year, but unfortunately, the drive ended in 3. When he got the ball back on the next drive, though, he was going to make sure that he finished it off with 7. So after running this zig route to the outside, he was a little bit before jumping over a defender and making his way across the goal line for a touchdown. Easily one of the best plays of his career as he just leaps over that dude and gets in for 7 for Oregon.
I'm pretty loyal when it comes to
Looking good for Oregon, but
football
unfortunately,
teams.
right before half,
Those
Dante
are
Moore
sports
throws a pick
teams.
that sets Washington up with another score.
Pretty
And
loyal.
now when they get the ball back after halftime, this game is tied at 17. But they had the idea to just keep taking shots at DeCorian Moore, and it was definitely working out. This particular drive only ended in 3, but as the fourth quarter rolled around, he would find himself wide open in the corner of the end zone once again, and he was helping to put away another game for the Oregon Ducks. In a game where they squeaked it out 27-24, and DeCorian actually had his highest reception total of the season with 9, to go with 184 yards and 2 touchdowns. And it was kind of crazy to think that he was doing all this with no Evan Stewart opposite of him. He even had some reporters asking him what he's going to do now that Evan isn't there.
I play with confidence, that's really my mojo. Like if I'm not confident, then I'm not myself, but I'm always confident.
Yeah, his confidence was probably the reason why he signed another NIL deal, and also had no problem with the coaches challenging him for their upcoming game. Because Oregon is about to head into another Big Ten matchup, but this time it'll be against a top 25 ranked opponent. Unfortunately, there were a lot of times throughout the season where DeCorian and Dante were not on the same page, and the first half of this game was definitely one of those times. But by the end of the half, with DeCorian running a skinny post over the middle and there being no safety over the top, it was pretty easy for them to get connected. As DeCorian would come up with his first catch of the game, and it looks like he's going to the end zone, but he gets stopped down at the 1-yard line. Luckily, though, in the next play, it was also DeCorian who finished off the play, getting Oregon in the end zone for a touchdown to take the lead. Now in the second half, this Oregon offense started to move a lot more efficiently as other players were also getting in the end zone as well. Oregon has another receiver, Dickey, who had been here the previous season, who was beginning to show how effective he could be playing opposite of DeCorian Moore. But by the end of the game, it seems like just everybody was making plays, as the tight end was able to make a catch up the middle and get across the goal line for another score to effectively put an end to this game, with Oregon going on to demolish Illinois 38-7. And shout out to Dante Moore for winning player of the game for his excellent passing performance. The entire receiving room had contributed, but of course DeCorian was leading the team like he had been the past 2 seasons. Now, a lot of people on Oregon's schedule were beginning to grow scared because they knew that DeCorian was only going to get better. And even though he wasn't leading the country in yards quite yet, he had played 2 less games than the leader. And in pretty much any game, DeCorian Moore was a threat to go for over 200 yards. And a lot of teams seem to know that, including Michigan State, who just so happened to be Oregon's next opponent. And this was definitely a game where Oregon was going to try to take some shots deep, but they noticed that Michigan State had some extra coverage for DeCorian Moore. A lot of times they were moving defenders over so they can bracket him towards the middle and keep him contained. But the way they had him clamped up kind of started to free up some other receivers, as Dickey over there gets in for his 3rd touchdown in just 2 weeks. But like I said, man, he was out here double teaming DeCorian, and there wasn't really much he can do, especially when he was getting thrown shitty ass passes. In the second half, Oregon found themselves down by 10, but DeCorian was making some plays to start moving his team downfield. He eventually got them inside the red zone where he ran this weird looking out route, but was able to get open for a touchdown, getting in for a score that makes it now a 3-point deficit for Oregon. And luckily, it would remain that way until the 4th quarter where they got the ball back. And with the only place that DeCorian can really go being the middle, he was taking whatever he could get. And with this clock winding down, DeCorian would finally be able to slip past the defender, make a catch towards the outside, and bring his team down towards the 1-yard line, where he might have been inches away from a touchdown, but it was all good though, because now he can chew clock, and the Oregon running back can waltz across the goal line for a touchdown to complete the second half comeback and lock in another victory for Oregon, with Oregon going on to win this game 21-17. And despite being double teamed all game, DeCorian still went for over 100 yards and a touchdown, winning player of the game. And at this point, DeCorian felt incredible going into the rest of his season. And he felt really confident that Oregon was going to keep winning and continue to keep up this level of play. And not just because they have a great coach or a good quarterback or an excellent defense, but because he truly felt like he might be the chosen one. DeCorian Moore came out in the game against Michigan and he was frying these boys up, double team or not. And after getting in for his first touchdown, he realized that he understands it now. Because throughout this game, he continued to find a way to get open downfield. And even with the quarterback throwing this ball to the Earth's stratosphere, he still comes down with this catch, right before being dragged across the goal line for a touchdown to give Oregon the lead. But as he continued to cook them, I guess Michigan forgot that they had to guard him, and he continued to come up with catches downfield, this time breaking off a tackler before running across the goal line and eventually being tackled in the end zone for another score, and by now doing enough to put this game away, as Oregon won 31-14 in another game that DeCorian went for over 200 yards, but this time with 3 touchdowns. This kid was absolutely balling, and of course another NIL deal just falls right in his lap. But there were bound to be more as he continues on with this season and into his next game against Oklahoma State. And this was a game where DeCorian continued to make catches downfield for his team, eventually bringing him down to the goal line where they gave him a touch pass, and he was easily able to make it across the goal line for maybe his easiest touchdown of his career. But even in games where this Oregon offense was struggling all throughout, all it would take was one play to DeCorian Moore to make it all look so easy, because he was easily the most consistent player in the country as far as making a play for his team, especially when they needed it most, and getting them across the goal line for a touchdown. He did it in the biggest moments of the game here against Oklahoma State, and it's no surprise that they would go on to win 21-14, having another incredible 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, one score that turned out to be a very clutch game winner. It was no surprise that he continued his domination against Northwestern. He was only able to get in for 1 touchdown throughout the entire first half, but it was all good though, man, because he had something for that second half. At the end of the third quarter, he was coming up with another catch over the middle, and there was nobody going to stop him on his way to the end zone for his 2nd score of the game. But after Oregon was given the ball right back at the goal line, DeCorian would take advantage with his 3rd touchdown of the game to put Oregon up 21-7. And by the end of the game, he was just doing it for shits and giggles because he got in for another touchdown, already doing way more than enough to put an end to this game, as Oregon would go on to beat the brakes off of Northwestern 38-7, in a game where DeCorian had 10 receptions, 4 of them being touchdowns. Now, DeCorian was doing all of this while still taking care of the student part of being a student athlete, but at the moment, really nothing came before what he was trying to accomplish with Oregon, and he damn sure was not going to let the 25th ranked team in the country stand in his way. DeCorian came out on the road against USC, and it was safe to say that this wasn't unlike any of his previous games, because very early on he was coming up with the catch and streaking downfield for his first points of the game to extend Oregon's early lead. And by the end of the game, he was out there playing on the opposite side, still finding a way to get open over the top and get in for another touchdown, extending their lead even further on their way to a 28-10 victory. And at this point, with the way that DeCorian was playing, it was not only likely that Oregon would make their way into the college football playoffs, but DeCorian even had a chance to potentially win a Heisman Trophy. Now, the Ducks have had a quarterback win it, but he could be the first ever receiver to win the award for them. And it seems like Sports Illustrated also thinks that he could win it too. The important thing is closing out their season strong in the last 2 games of the regular season, especially in their next one as they face off against fake-ass Patrick Mahomes in Nebraska. And this was the game where some of DeCorian's biggest contributions were actually on display. He was able to take this jet pass upfield before saying hey and picking up a big chunk of yardage for his team. But for large portions of this game, it was actually other players that were coming up big. Like Dickey, he was breaking off multiple tacklers and bringing Oregon inside the goal-to-goal territory, while their running back who was able to cap the drive off with a touchdown before coming out on the following drive and coming up with the catch and breaking off 2 tacklers on his way towards the end zone for another touchdown on his day. It was a 14-14 ball game, and DeCorian hadn't accounted for any of the scores. But he was definitely trying to change that in the second half as he was able to find himself wide open over the top. And it seems like there was absolutely nobody in the vicinity as he was getting his team across the goal line for another score in this game, giving Oregon back the lead in the process, but they still had some work to do to try and maintain it. So even when DeCorian wasn't open, he was trying to get himself open and move the chains for the Ducks. But after this drive ultimately ends in only 3 points, this would turn out to be a tie ball game with under 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And once again, we had some other players coming up with big plays to move them in scoring position. But on this 2nd down and 1, they decided to take a shot deep to DeCorian, and he went up there and said, "Wang!" coming up with a catch that would not only give the Oregon Ducks the lead, but effectively put an end to this game, as Oregon goes on to sneak this one out 31-24. A shout out to Dante Moore with almost 400 yards.
สุดท้ายแต่ว่าอย่าลืมนะครับตอนนี้ตัวรอบนัดชิงชนะเลิศอีสุสุครับได้วันได้ที่แล้วนะใช่ครับวันที่ไม่ใช่แก้วเรือนโอ้โหโดนกับไปที่รวยครับช่วงขาวันที่8ปีจากโค้ชชกมา29แพ้เพียง8ครั้งครับชนะ21สาโหดแห่งซาร่าเลด้าเอลกายัดโอ้โหวันนี้เปิดหัวใหญ่เหลือเกินโอ้โหอ้าวส่วนคนที่24ปีครับจากมอสโกรัสเซียครับโอ้โห186แล้วครับโอ้โหยาวเหลือเกินครับวลาดิลาฟโบโบเอดอฟครับชื่อนี้อ่านยากนะครับนี่ครับเทียบสัดส่วนเทียบอายุนี่24กับ18นะครับส่วนสูงก็เป็นทางด้านวาดาดิสลาฟนะครับก็สูงกว่าครับขออนุญาตเรียกนามสกุลแล้วกันง่ายนิดนึงนะครับโบโบเอดอฟนะครับก็ยังยากนะสำหรับผมอ่ะนะฮะแต่ก็ยากกว่าชื่อหน้าง่ายกว่าชื่อหน้าก็จากรัสเซียนะครับเจอกับโมร็อกโกในคู่แรกมันแน่นอนนะฮะหลายสัปดาห์นี้ก็เรียกได้ว่าโชว์เป็นเรื่องของแม่ไม้มวยไทยนะครับมีลูกล่อลูกชนจังหวะฝีมือความสวยงามของอาวุธนะครับแต่ว่าสัปดาห์นี้นี่โอ้โหต่างชาติเจอกันเนี่ย2คู่แล้วไทยโมร็อกโกอีก2คู่ไทยอิหร่าน1คู่นะครับมาดูไทยสวีเดนและปิดท้ายครับวันนี้วรจักรเล็กเกียรติจักรชัยครับเจอของแปลกจากอเมริกาใต้ครับผมบาซูนะฮะดักลาสซานโตสเลยครับกับวรจักรเล็กคู่สุดท้ายครับวันที่พลาดไม่ได้ครับทั้ง7คู่ครับโดยเฉพาะคู่แรกแล้วดูครับรับน็อกหรือเปล่าครับของใหญ่ของยักษ์แบบนี้ครับมาแล้วครับทั้งหมัดทั้งเข่ามาแล้วครับตั้งใจมาประเคนเลยครับซ้อมมานานเพื่องานนี้แหละครับเดินเข้าหานะครับโบโบเอดอฟนี่ครับรอยสักสวยงามตัวใหญ่ครับเดินเข้าหาประสบการณ์ไม่รู้ว่าเยอะกว่าหรือเปล่าครับแต่ว่าเปิดก่อนแล้วครับตอนนี้เรดาร์นี่จากโมร็อกโกนะครับส่วนอีกท่านหนึ่งที่อยู่เวทีนี่ก็กรรมการอรุณกุลพุทธชาติครับจากประเทศไทยของเราตัดหน้าคะแนนนะครับมีกรรมการภูกิจความประยูรกรรมการอัญชลีจองรักและกรรมการสุรเชษฐ์แก้ววงโอ้โดนแข้งแล้วครับแต่คู่แรกนี่จัดใหญ่ๆเลยครับ82กิโลกรัมจัดมาแบบนี้ครับจัดหนักจัดเต็มมาแบบนี้ครับเดินไปอุ้ยซ้ายดักไว้ก่อนขยับครับยิงโดนเดินแล้วแต่ว่าถ้าเดินเข้าไปแล้วช้าเนี่ยมันจะโดนก่อนนะครับแหมแกบาทาลูกพักเลยหยิบขึ้นหน้าเลยครับแต่ว่าโดนจับโดนเทไปครับโบโบเอดอฟขยับต่อครับไม่รอแล้วเจอแข้งซ้ายครับเดินเข้าไปช้าโดนแข้งซ้ายครับหมัด1 2 3ครับโอ้มาเป็นชุดเลยครับมีหมัดนองสูง1 2 3แล้วก็แทงเข่าเข้าไปครับเด้งครับจังหวะเด้งจังหวะตีถือว่าคู่ขี้เลยนะครับยกแรกมาครับโอ้ยจะเหวี่ยงความจักรนาลายครับยังไม่โดนครับโบโบเอดอฟโอ้โหโดนแข้งซ้ายเรดาร์นี่ไปมาเนี่ยทำท่าจะเตะได้ดีครับโดนหมัดครับโอ้โดนหมัดแล้วถอยเอาแล้วครับแบบหมัดแหวกกาดเข้าหน้า โอ้เอาครับแข้งซ้ายนี่เกือบเข้าก้านคอครับโอ้โหหมายของสูงเลยครับแต่ว่าพลาดเป้าไปนะครับแข้งซ้ายก้านคอครับเท่ากับว่ามุมดำนี่โบโบเอดอฟนี่หมัดอันตรายครับ1 2 3ครับส่วนเรดาร์แข้งของแกนี่ไม่ธรรมดาครับโอ้แต่โดนหมัดครับจังหวะนี้โดนหมัดครับมันมีเป๋ไปเป๋มาครับแล้ววงในเอาสับมาหมุนศอกกลับคืนเหมือนกันครับเสียหลักเล็กน้อยตั้งลำกันใหม่เป๋ทั้งคู่ครับตั้งลำใหม่ต่อยหมัดซ้ายโอ้โหโดนแล้วอาการออกนะครับเรดาร์เมื่อสักครู่แต่ว่าดูฟื้นไวครับฟื้นไวครับโอ้โหฮิรันม้วนแผ่นดินอีกนี่ครับดูต่างชาติต่อยกันเนี่ยเรียกได้ว่าเพลินตาครับจับเพแม่ยัดศอกเข้าไปวงในครับรวบเลยแล้วก็ถนัดทั้งคู่นะครับวงในเดินเข้าหาต่อครับเรดาร์เอลกายะโอ้โดนหมัดนี่ครับโอ้จังหวะกระแทกหมัดโอ้ฟอกตามเข้าไปอีกโอ้โหกระแทกซ้ายนี่หมัดเย็บข้างหน้านะครับคมเหลือเกินทางด้านโบโบเอดอฟครับโอ้โหเอาละน็อกไม่น็อกยกนี้น็อกไม่น็อกฮุกซ้ายคืนมาแล้วโอ้ยยกแรกเตียนอยู่เตียนไปครับพักแป๊บเดียวกลับมาดูไฮไลท์กันครับยกที่ผ่านมาเนี่ยโอ้โหอาวุธเรียกว่าแจกกันสารพัดเลยนะครับจังหวะฮิรันม้วนแผ่นดินครับโดนหมัดซ้ายของเรดาร์ครับโบโบเอดอฟเดินเข้ามาในฮุกซ้ายก่อนแล้วต่อยขวาตามครับเริ่มจะเห็นโอกาสในการต่อยหมัดสวยๆครับแล้วลูกนี้ครับโอ้โหฮิรันม้วนแผ่นดินครับเข้าที่หลังศีรษะแล้วหมัดเย็บหมัดนี้ครับหลอดกาดเข้าไปนี่ออกอาการเลยนะครับทางด้านเรดาร์เอลกายะและนี่คือรายการไทยไฟท์ลีกวีคที่87นะครับติดตามได้เป็นประจำทุกวันอาทิตย์เวลา 18 นาฬิกาเป็นต้นไปก็ถ่ายทอดสดผ่านทางสังเวียนเวิลด์สยามสเตเดียมตะวันนาบางกะปินะครับหรือว่าเดือดเลยครับสัปดาห์หน้าในมวยรอบปุ๋ยไข่มุกนะครับจะกลับมาในรอบตัดเชือกนะครับมวยรอบตอนนี้นี่ก็ทยอยใกล้ได้บทสรุปกันแล้วครับ2รอบใหญ่ๆของเราครับรอบอีซูไทยแลนด์แชมเปี้ยนชิพและมวยรอบปุ๋ยไข่มุกนะครับแต่ดูคู่นี้ก่อนครับแหมมีอาการไปแล้วนะครับทางด้านมุมขาวจากโมร็อกโกครับเรดาร์นี่ครับมีหันมองพี่เลี้ยงหน่อยนะครับเดินเข้าหาเลยครับทางด้านโบโบเอดอฟโอ้จังหวะเหวี่ยงกลับแล้วโอ้ยศอกครับแม่ประเคนเข้าที่ใบหน้าพอดีครับหมัดซ้ายครับทำงานต่อครับแกก็ต่อยหมัดแทงเข่าของแกไปเรื่อยครับแม่ระยะประชิดมีศอกสลับครับโบโบเอดอฟเดินต่อครับช้าหน่อยครับบางทีก็นี่ครับโอ้โหแม่แกกลับหลังฟาดเอาเลยครับแทงซ้ายมาหมัด 1-2 ครับยกนี้เปลี่ยนมาเป็นฝ่ายเดินบ้างนะครับสำหรับเรดาร์มุมขาวครับโดนจระเข้ฟาดถางไปแล้วครับเมื่อสักครู่ครับแทงซ้ายครับแข้งแกดีแกออกไวนะครับแต่โดนหมัดของโบโบเอดอฟโต้คือมาทีไรก็ไม่ค่อยดีแต่ว่าแมตช์จังหวะสักครู่แต่ว่าจังหวะเมื่อสักครู่นี่เป็นโบโบเอดอฟนะครับที่เป็นฝ่ายโดนครับรอเข้าไปกระชับพื้นที่ครับหมัดซ้ายล้วงลำตัวหมัดขวาขยับพื้นครับแหมศอกแกปักเอาเลยดื้อๆอาวุธนี่เริ่มจะทำหน้าที่เองได้ดีขึ้นครับโอ้โหแต่ว่าหลอกดอกนี้ครับเตะซ้ายฟาดหน้าเน็ตนี่แกเสียหลักล้มไปเดินเข้าหาแล้วนะครับต้นน้ำมีความสดชื่นอยู่ที่เรดาร์ครับมุมขาวยังมุ้นไปดินมาแล้วเจอจับคอแล้วตีเข้าไปโอเวดอฟจากรัสเซียครับคู่ขี้แม่จับฟันสองดีครับถือว่าทำถูกครับกรรมการแยกเลยต้องหยุดขยับเดินครับทางด้านเรดาร์โอ้ยต่อยซ้ายลำตัวดีขึ้นนะครับยกนี้โดนตุ้ยท้องคืนไปเดือดแล้วครับเดือดแล้วโอ้แม่หลักไม่ค่อยดีเตะสูงไปหน่อยครับเห็น2จังหวะแล้วครับเตะสูงไปหน่อยโดนท้องผายมือมาดินั่นครับศอกกลับเลยครับ
ศอกนี่ครับถางป่าคืนมาครับแล้วจิ้มที่หน้าด้วยบอกว่าแหมอยากโดนต่อยหน้าจังเลยอยากโดนต่อยหน้าจังเลยขอสักหนึ่งกำปั้นล้วงลำตัวเข้าไปครับหมัดขวาครับหมัดซ้ายยกนิ้วแรงขึ้นมานะคุณน้อง
โอ้โหดีเลยครับนี่ฮะดูมีการใช้ลูกพึดนะครับจากยกนี้แล้วนี่ทำท่าเป๋ๆนะครับเรด้ายกนี้เดินเข้าหาครับฟาดเข้าไปอีกทีนึงวางจากนาลายครับเข้ามาเสียบโอ้โหซ้ายครับไปลำเต็มโอ้แต่ว่าเจอกวาดลานไปครับโอ้โหหงายท้องไปเลยยก2นี่ยังบอกไม่ถูกครับว่าใครจะดีกว่านะครับช่วงปลายแล้วขยับเข้ามาเดินเข้ามาครับฟันต่อยลำตัวโอ้โหดูยกนี้นี่แกเร่งเอาแบบหมดเลยครับสุดยอดครับเดี๋ยวพักแป๊บเดียวมาชมไฮไลท์ในยกที่2นะครับโอ้โหถือว่ายังเดือดไม่แพ้ยกแรกครับจังหวะยัดศอกครับของเรด้าเอลกายัดนี่ครับโอ้ฟาดหางจระเข้ครับตุ้ยท้องครับตัดลำตัวด้วยซ้ายสวยๆทั้งนั้นเลยนะครับอาวุธของเรด้าและนี่ครับพอโดนแล้วก็มาอีกครับเหมือนคนละคนจากยกแรกนะครับโอ้เหลือเชื่อเหมือนกันครับความเป็นนักสู้ของเรด้าเอลกายัดนะครับแต่ว่าโบโบเอดอฟเองก็ยังประมาทไม่ได้ครับยกแรกเนี่ยเราเห็นพลังกำปั้นของเขาเนี่ยถือว่าไว้ใจได้ครับอาจจะต่อยเข้าเป้าน้อยไปนิดนึงครับในยกที่ผ่านมาเดี๋ยวดูยกนี้ครับนี่คือยกที่3ครับแล้วก็ย้ำอีกครั้งว่า1นับเท่ากับ1แต้มนะครับและถ้า3ยกไม่มีข้อสรุปเรามียก4ให้ครับลุยเลยครับขยับเข้าไปกลางเวทีครับเดี๋ยวดูว่าใครจะดีกว่ายกนี้ครับโอ้แข้งซ้ายไม่เตะสูงแล้วนะครับเรด้าซ้ายครับเอาต่อยหมัดมามีบวกแข้งคืนไปครับจะดูว่าแรงต่อเนื่องขนาดไหนครับแข้งซ้ายเอาคืนด้วยขวายกแรกนี่หมัดของโบโบเอดอฟนี่ดีนะครับแต่ว่ายก2ครับเรด้าก็แรงขึ้นมาครับแล้วนี่ครับยกที่3ครับหมัดซ้ายป้ายไปแล้วศอกคืนมาครับจังหวะงัดขวาจ่อล่างขยับคืนครับจะล้วงท้องแต่ว่าวูดวาดไปเดินต่อครับยกนี้ก็อยากจะเอาคืนเหมือนกันครับเสียหลักครับรูปร่างใหญ่82กิโลเนี่ยช่างเมื่อวานนะครับอย่าลืมว่าได้กินได้นอนไปเนี่ยเผลอๆได้มีเกือบ90นะครับทั้งคู่ใหญ่แบบนี้ครับไฟจัดให้เดินมาแล้วครับต่อยหมัดไปดีต่อครับแข้งซ้ายโอ้บูเอดอฟเองก็แหมซึมไปนิดนึงครับเดินแล้วทีมงานสั่งเดินแล้วมุมดำสั่งเดินโอ้ยแต่ว่าเดินไปโดนครับเดินต่อครับไม่สนนี่ครับโอ้โหดูลีลาแกใช้ได้เลยเริ่มโชว์ฮะเริ่มโชว์เป็นไงล่ะแล้วมันจะมองอะไรครับปัด1 2 3ครับเรด้าลีลาไม่ธรรมดาครับรายนี้ลีลาไม่ธรรมดาครับคือคู่นี้มีได้มีโดนทั้งคู่เลยครับแต่ว่าโอ้โหทนดีเหลือเกินครับทีแรกเห็นรูปร่างเห็นอาวุธไม่น่าจะครบยกเข้าไปยกมาครับนี่เตะซ้ายครับเตะซ้ายครับเรด้าดันแล้วดูครับแม่จะฟรีคิกหัวเข้าโกซะหน่อยเริ่มจะตัวหนักแล้วครับตอนนี้โบเอดอฟมาครับโอ้เรด้านี่ครับหมุนอีกแกมั่นใจตัวเองมากๆนะครับซ้ายไปโบเอดอฟเอาไงครับยกสุดท้ายโดนหมัดอีกง้างยังไม่ได้ครับจังหวะพิรันม้วนแผ่นดินเดินต่อโบเอดอฟเดินไปโดนซ้ายนี่ครับเตะคืนไปเรี่ยวแรงยังมีไหมครับท้ายแล้วอัดอีกทีนึงเตะขาคืนมาครับโอ้เดินต่อครับย้ำที่ขาเหมือนอะไรจะเข้าตาหรือเปล่าได้แล้วทำไว้ครับโอ้กระถีเข้าหน้าเลยครับจะเด็ดหัวคืนก็เลยไปแต่เอามือหยุดศอกไว้เลยนะครับโบเอดอฟจังหวะที่เรด้าสับมาครับ
หมัด 1-2 ครับอาเรล่าอุ้ยศอกกลับเมื่อสักครู่นี้แหมเข้าเต็มๆเลยครับหมดยกสุดท้ายครับแหมได้ศอกกลับช็อตสุดท้ายไปนะครับสำหรับโบโบเอดอฟครับตัวแรกของเราคนนี้ครับไทยไฟท์ลีกวีคที่ 87 นะครับภาพช้าจังหวะอุ้ยเนี่ยครับหมัดขวากระแทกก่อนครับชิงออกก่อนแข้งนะครับหมัดซ้ายเนี่ยครับจังหวะง้างมาแล้วขวาครับเกรงมาแต่แม่การเดินทางหมัดขวาช้าไปหน่อยครับแม่โดนเพื่อนชิงต่อยก่อนแล้วครับแล้วจังหวะที่จะสอกกลับแต่ว่าแม่ไม่เต็มวงสวิงครับไปติดท่อนแขนครับแล้วเนี่ยครับซ้ายครับไปสูงเลยไปหน่อยครับโค้ชจิ๊บเชิญเลยครับ
และผลการตัดสินของกรรมการนะครับ The winner is Black Corner Wadila from Russia
ครับก็เป็นนักชกรัสเซียนะครับที่ชนะไปครับเดี๋ยวเราพักคู่เดียวคู่ต่อไปอิหร่านปะทะอินโดนีเซีย
ท่านผู้ชมครับเรากลับมามันกันต่อนะครับกับคู่ซุปเปอร์ไฟท์ในพิกัดน้ำหนัก 62 กิโลกรัมครับ และนักมวย White Corner he's from ซูเมดังประเทศอินโดนีเซีย please welcome ขุนศึกแดนอีเหนาเอ็ดวินปูตราและนักมวย Black Corner ครับท่านผู้ชม he's from Raj ประเทศอิหร่าน please welcome ขาลุยจากเมือง Raj อามีเรซาชูบารี
นะครับในคู่ที่ 2 ของรายการครับพิกัด 62 กิโลกรัมมีกรรมการถาวรอิงอุบลนะครับเป็นผู้ชี้ขาดบนเวที3ท่านให้คะแนนมีกรรมการอรุณกุมุตชาติกรรมการภูกิจพรามประยูรและกรรมการอัญชลีกองรักครับคู่นี้นี่ก็ถือว่าเป็นครั้งแรกในรายการไทยไฟท์ลีกก็ว่าได้นะครับเจอกันระหว่างอิหร่านปะทะกับอินโดนีเซียเห็นไม่ค่อยบ่อยนะครับนักชกมวยไทยจากอินโดนีเซียครับและนี่คือ2ผู้บรรยายภาษาอังกฤษของเราครับสายมือท่านผู้ชมครับมิสเตอร์ชัยกิจอมฤตขวามือก็มิสเตอร์อลันสิริสัมพันธ์นะครับสามารถรับชมไทยไฟท์เป็นภาษาอังกฤษได้นะครับผ่านทาง YouTube ช่องของเราครับไปที่ไทยไฟท์ออฟฟิเชียลนะครับมีไฟท์ความทรงจำมีความมันมากมายครับให้ติดตามกันขณะที่ถ้าอยากติดตามข่าวสารของไทยไฟท์นะครับไปที่ Facebook ได้เลยครับที่เพจ Facebook ของไทยไฟท์ King of มวยไทยมาดูข้อมูลมุมขาวกันครับนี่คือนักชกวัย 24 ปีจากเมืองสุเมดังประเทศอินโดนีเซียนะครับสูง 171 ชกมา 38 ครับชนะ 29 แพ้ 9 ฉายาเนี่ยขุนศึกแดนอีเหนาเอ็ดวินปูต้า
ส่วนมุมดำนี่จากอิหร่านนะครับอายุ 17 ปีครับอามีเลซาชูบารีครับเดินทางมาถึงคู่ที่2นะครับไทยไฟท์ลีกของเราครับขอบพระคุณบริษัทตรีเพชรอีสุเซลจำกัดปุ๋ยไข่มุกตาเรือใบไข่มุกโดยบริษัทปุ๋ยไวกิ้งจำกัดรถขุดคูโบต้าน้ำดื่มซีทรูเวอร์สยามสเตเดียมตะวันนาบางกะปิสมาคมกีฬามวยไทยไฟท์นานาชาติสถานีโทรทัศน์ช่อง 8 กฎหมายเลข 27 ครับ
เมื่อสักครู่ในอายุในห่างกัน 7 ปีนะครับนักชกอิหร่านอย่างอามิเลซ่าเนี่ยอายุเพิ่ง 17 เท่านั้นเองขณะที่เอ็ดวินปูตราครับ 24 ปีก็ถือว่ายังไม่เยอะนะครับมาดูครับคู่ที่2ของเราครับพิกัด 62 กิโลกรัมนี่ครับนักชกชาวอิหร่านนะครับอามีเรซาชูบารี เดี๋ยวคู่ต่อไปเนี่ยก็มีนักชกไทยแล้วนะครับไทยปะทะกับโมร็อกโก2 คู่ติดเลยครับยังมีวันนี้นี่ยังมีวันเฉลิมวออร่ามชัยนะครับที่ในรายการไทยไฟท์ลีกผลงานดีมากๆครับชายเล็กวอสุขสันต์จะเจอกับนักสู้จากสวีเดนครับแล้วก็วรจักรเล็กเกียรติชัดชัยครับดวลกับดักราสซานโตสเดี๋ยวมาติดตามครับนี่คือความมันในคู่ที่เหลือนะครับวันนี้นี่เดือดแน่นอนครับแต่ดูคู่นี้น็อกไม่น็อกครับอิหร่านกางเกงดำนะครับมุมดำส่วนอินโดนีเซียนี่กางเกงขาวครับมุมขาว
โอ้โหขวามาแล้วครับโอ้แม่วัดกันหน่อยครับไม่รู้ใครเตะแรงกว่ากันนะครับแต่ดูจากตรงนี้มาแรงทั้งคู่ครับแรงทั้งคู่ครับโอ้ยหมัดรัวมาแล้วครับอิหร่านซ้ายครับจังหวะล้วงครับอินโดไม่สะดุ้งครับมีเตะคืนขวาเจาะไปเจาะมาเจาะคืนครับ
มาครับแหมหมัด 1-2ไม่กลัวเลยนะครับอามิเลซ่าตีไปนะครับเอ็ดวินปูตราครับเดินเข้ามาแม่มีสับขานี่สะดุ้งเล็กน้อยครับแทงซ้ายไปโอ้อาวุธเริ่มจะแจกแล้วครับแม่ไม่ต้องรอให้กรรมการนี่กระตุ้นเลยนะครับคู่นี้นี่ขึ้นมาก็ใส่เลย
แกเตะแต่ว่าแรงมากครับอามิเลซ่าอุ้ยเจาะล่างนี่ครับอุ้ยเผลอขึ้นบนครับเตะที่เลี้ยงเลยนะครับพอเจอแท่งแรงๆแบบนี้นี่เอ็ดวินพยายามจะเปลี่ยนเสิร์ฟด้วยการเดินเร็วแล้วต่อยหมัดสวนทางปืนแท่งเข้ามาครับแทงขวาครับหลุดไปครับเจาะล่างมาครับเจอแข้งขวาของอามีเลซ่าคือไปครับปัดดู2อุ้ยจังหวะแหมมีบวกคืนมีหยุดเหมือนกันนะครับจังหวะบวกมันคืนของเอ็ดวินครับโอ้
จะมีเสียหลักครับแต่ว่ายังยิ้มได้นะครับเอ็ดวินมาครับต่อยไปเดี๋ยวดูว่าถ้าอามีเลซ่าโดนแล้วจะเป็นอย่างไรนะครับเอาแล้วครับแม่เสียหลักล้มไปโอ้มุมดำนี่อามีเลซ่านี่ลูกศิษย์เกียนดาวนะครับต่อยหมัดเข้าไปรัวครับโยกเข้าหาดูรัดกุมทีเดียวครับเอ็ดวินปูต้าโดดง่ายครับหมัดมาเสียบเข่าครับโอ้ต้นๆนี่ถ้าผ่านไปได้ในหน้าคิดเลยนะครับเพราะว่าอามิเลซ่าค่อนข้างจะเร่งเกมเยอะเหมือนกันนี่ครับยืนกันใกล้ๆครับเดินบ้างแล้วนะครับเอ็ดวินมาแล้วครับหมัดลัวเข้าไปครับมีเข่าด้วย
กดมาก่อนแยกมาก่อนครับโอ้ยังเอาคางบี้กันอยู่เลยครับ เข่าไม่ตีเอาคางบี้แทนก็แล้วกันครับไม่ยอมกันแล้วครับว่ากันอย่างนั้นเถอะเอาทุกจังหวะครับเอาหมัด1 2 3อุ้ยจังหวะสอบพื้นเอ็ดวินครับแต่ว่าอามิเลซ่าผายมือบอกไม่เป็นไรแข้งขวาครับปัด1 2คืน
โอ้โหนี่ครับยังดูไม่ออกนะครับคู่นี้วงในไปครับของทางด้านอามิเลซ่าโอ้โหไม่ยอมกันทั้งคู่เลยครับอยากเดินบ้างเอ็ดวินแม่เตะติดกาดครับอามิเลซ่าแบบเบิ้ลแข้งโอ้โดนท้องครับวงในเด้งตีไปตีอีกทีครับแล้วก็หักแค่เสียหลักครับแล้วเสียหลักทั้งคู่ด้วยพักคู่เดียวครับทุก
This is crazy Muay Thai action, right? You know Muay Thai. I had Muay Thai fights myself. Let me tell you, man. In India, it's
ภาพช้านะครับในยกที่ผ่านมาครับจังหวะแลกแข่งกันครับของทั้งคู่นี่ต่อยหมัดครับอามิเลซ่าแข่งขวานี่สูงนะครับแม่เตะติดกาดเดินจ้วงเอาคืนเลยครับเอ็ดวินปูต้าครับจากอินโดนีเซียบ้านใกล้เรือนเคียงเรานะครับอาเซียนบ้านเราครับแล้วนี่ครับเกือบไปครับจังหวะงัดศอกครับเอ็ดวินปูต้านี่ก็เน้นนี่ครับโอ้โหฟันศอกสวยงามเลยนะครับแต่ว่าปริมาณอาวุธเนี่ยอยู่ที่อามิเลซ่าครับเดี๋ยวดูยก2นะครับยกแรกนี่ก็แจกอาวุธกันถือว่าไม่ประหยัดกันเลยครับยก2เนี่ยเชื่อว่าเดือดเข้มข้นแน่ครับตามมันต่อยกที่2
โอ้มาถึงก็ใส่กันเลยครับมาแล้วครับหมัด2 แล้วก็มีแข้งด้วยอามิเลซ่าเอ็ดวินพยายามจะเดินแล้วก็ต่อยหมัดเอาคืนครับโอ้ชี้แล้วครับชี้แล้วครับอะไรไหลออกมาครับนี่ครับโอ้โหเป็นทางเลยเป็นทางเลยครับถึงเลือดแล้วครับยกที่2คู่ที่2ไทยไฟท์ลีกวีคที่87ครับถึงเลือดแล้วครับโอ้ที่มุมดำนี่เป็นเลือดของมุมขาวเลยครับดูครับคิ้วขวาบริเวณหางแหกโค้งไปแล้วครับแล้วเลือดเยอะซะด้วยเป็นไงปัด1-2ครับวงในพยายามเหน็บพยายามเนี่ยครับตีเข้าไปครับโอ้ยจังหวะนิดเดียวครับแตกเลยครับแข้งขวาเจาะล่างไปครับอามิเลซ่าซ้ายเจอแข้งขวาเอ็ดวินคืนเอ็ดวินมีหมัดซ้ายครับโอ้จังหวะป้ายไปได้เสียวเลยนะครับหมัดซ้ายของเอ็ดวินนะครับ
โอ้ยดีครับแหมมีทักศอกมาก่อนจะหงายท้องไปครับเนี่ยโดนเข้าที่ศีรษะเนี่ยต้องแหมบอกให้ที่แหมเบาหน่อยครับเดินเข้าหาครับไอ้วินกูต้าเริ่มจะเดินอยากเอาคืนแล้วนะครับตอนนี้เนี่ยเริ่มจะบ้าเลือดครับแหมเจอไปอีกครับทีมแล้วเดินเข้าหาต่อครับนี่ครับโอ้โหดูแผลสดๆครับแต่ว่าโชคดีที่เลือดเนี่ยไม่ได้ไหลเข้าตานะครับแต่ที่แหมทางหางคิ้วครับแต่ว่าแหมถ้ารับอีกเดี๋ยวมีอีกครับเดี๋ยวมีอีกอ้าวยังไงครับโอ้โหเสียหลักล้ม
But thanks for watching, man. That was pretty cool. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it. You know, we're talking about next live later on today. So, yes, I used to do Muay Thai, also MMA. I don't play football. I never played football. But, it was awesome. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe and like. What's up, going to channel? Yeah. Oh, my dad have to do something real quick. I have my work here. Yeah, I used to do Muay Thai and all that stuff. And it's I eat lunch right now. So I can put the position, right? So, so let me know what kind of sports y'all like. You can't cook. Yeah, cook out there. You can cook. Who watches MMA out there? Man, we have some swag, man. You know what? Um, you know, when I have to fight, the most about fighting is losing weight for the fight. Because in the weight loss process, I can't eat what I want to eat. You know, it sucks, right? Yeah, but I don't fight anymore, so I can eat what I want to eat now. I mean, I don't eat that much sweets anyway. I'm at work right now. I left my computer charger at home, so my laptop gonna come soon. Right now, at the end of the day, I can't believe it. I left my charger at home. I don't fight anymore, so I can eat. I can eat like I want to eat. Funny, man. Why do you charger? I'm just like that. That is so rich. I don't know. My computer just the phone battery just died. This laptop battery gonna die soon. Hmm. Miss you. Yeah, subscribe and like. But I appreciate y'all watching. Showing some love. You know, I'm starving. As you can see, I'm starving. All right. I'm out here picking out. But I do miss fighting though. I'll be right back. I'm at work right now. I gotta go to the patient. I'll be right back, chat. I'm back. What did I miss? Any comments in the chat? Have any comments for me? Well, you know, what's crazy is that I actually miss fighting chat. That's what's crazy about it. I used to wake up, train, I had to wake up, train, go to work, come back, train, and we had a fight coming up. Oh man, I was miserable. I'm not gonna eat. Yeah. And we had a fight coming up, chat. I was like, man, I'm talking to you. I ain't gonna lie, but this food is good. It's good. So, what's up about others you see? What's up about all these sports and gambling? And some baseball players just got arrested for gambling. You know, two baseball players got arrested for gambling in games, rigging games. You know, I don't understand how these guys make so much money for one of this freedom and career for $5,000, $2,000. It's mind blowing to me. Anyway, chat, thanks for joining me. I'll see y'all later, okay?